Restoring men in history. Now, there's a lot of talk going on right now about socialism because in New York City for the mayor's race, Mamdani won. So I thought we'd take a look at the warnings from Hayek today. And the New York mayor's race, he wanted to have a bigger government, more centralized for New York City, more control over you, and he was offering free goods. Hayek lived 1899 to 1992. He was at the London School of Economics 1931 to 1950, so he saw Hitler and he saw socialism coming in Britain. So he has a magnificent perspective on this. University of Chicago 1950 to 1962. And the book, which I assigned to the group years and years ago, and I've taken some things from it today, takeaways of when I read it. And he said socialism was what? A road to serfdom. You're going to lose your freedom, your individual liberty. It's not what America was made for. Personally, I like to buy what I want to buy. And if I want to smoke a cigar, I want to go smoke it and buy it where I want to buy it. And I don't want the government telling me what to eat and what I can put into my body or what I can do in terms of most things. I understand there are some laws, but in terms of most things, I want the freedom to choose what business I'm going to start, what job I'm going to do, and which cigar I'm going to smoke, and if I'm going to smoke a cigar, or if I'm going to buy a gun or whatever. So he states, Hayek, in his book, The Road to Serfdom, that it's going to move you away from individual freedom and give the state power over the individual. Now, some of the things the mayor advocated for were free city buses, free public child care, rent freeze. We can get in all these actually in another video, maybe affordable housing, city-owned grocery stores. All right, so those are some of the proposals. We could probably do a video on each of those, minimum wage increase. All right, so we're gonna go to an article and then I'm gonna give you the warnings from Hayek. And I just wanna set this up. Why would people be attracted to socialism? There's a Mises article that covers why people voted for New York. I don't think we're gonna get to that, but it's a lot of college-educated young people. LBM Journal, home prices are rising 2 times faster than income. November 9th, 2023. The American dream, pretty important, right, of home ownership is becoming even less obtainable as home prices have risen exponentially faster than income over the past 2 decades, according to a new study from HomeBay. Despite the housing market crash in 2008, the median U.S. home price climbed 162% between 2000 and 2022. So, to afford the median priced home of $433,100, Americans need, what do you think the income you need is for that? An income of roughly $166,600. Now, I would even argue the inflation index is even higher than they use here, but for this sake, $166,600. I saw another study where we've had so much inflation that $135,000 in 2005, it's way beyond that today to live at the same standard of living. But the median household earns how much? Just $74,580. So you need to make $166,600. The median household just earns $74,580. Now here's a key component. We found that the divide between home prices and income has caused, and this is an important measurement, house price to income ratio. Now why am I talking about housing prices? I'll tell you why. What would be the attraction of socialism? And what do I think the problem is? I think we're misdiagnosing the problem, and we're going to get to that in a minute. What's causing the inflation? What's causing the price of housing? Why do people think the system's broken? And the system is a little messed up when you look at this. The divide between home prices and income has caused the house price to income ratio to greatly exceed what experts consider healthy. So that's a problem, right? The average house price to income ratio has climbed to, get this, ready gentlemen, ladies, 5.8 nationwide, more than double the recommended ratio. And what's the recommended ratio? 2.6, right? So in other words, buying a home should cost about 2.6 what the average makes in a year, the average American, right? In reality, it costs 5.8. That's a problem. That's an issue. So the real thing you got to look at, and then people start saying, I'm not going to work hard. What's the point? I'll never own a home. I've heard it. We got guys, and I just had a guy in one of the Nashville groups the other day that said, none of my friends believe they'll ever own a home. So this is actually an American problem. This is a real problem. But what is causing it? We right now have a big federal government that's involved in unenumerated areas where they don't have powers. Home prices soared 162% since 2000, while income increased only 78%. And I think these are low, but let's go ahead with it. Housing prices have increased 2 times faster than income since 1985, 2.1 faster than income since 2000. If home prices had grown at the same rate as income, I think this is a key stat, the median U.S. home would cost nearly how much today, you think? They're saying it would cost $294,000, about 32% less than today's price of $433,100. That's a problem, right? This is why all these guys think they'll never own a home, they'll never get ahead, there's not much opportunity, the American dream is dead. And that's a problem. When you lose hope, you might be attracted to the appearance of universal income and socialism, which some people are attracted to socialism, according to the polls. To afford a home, Americans need an average income of roughly $166,600. We went through that. So none of the top 50 most populous metros in the U.S. have a home price to income ratio that's equal to or below the recommended 2.6, so that's an issue. So that's all I want to get into because I want to get to Hayek, but I wanted to set it up with this. Throughout 2001, this is a different piece. What piece is this? Home prices versus inflation, why millennials can't afford homes, 2022 data, March 28, 2023 by Anytime estimate. Throughout 2021, here's the inflation rate. Inflation rate jumped 7.5%. Now, I don't even think this Consumer Price Index is correct, but anyway, nearly 4 times the Federal Reserve's target inflation of 2%. And he talks about the effects, and I've heard this from the guys, I've heard this from everybody. What has gone up? Milk, butter, eggs, meat. You're paying more for everything, right? So you can't save as much. So the average single-family home cost $82,800, this article says, around 1985. It's a problem, right? In 1985, a home cost $82,800. Home prices increasingly are significantly outpacing inflation rates. Home prices have increased 1,608% since 1970, 1,608% since 1970, while inflation has increased 644%. So that's a problem for people, right? That's a real issue. In 2021 alone, home prices, and I saw this, rose 20%. Now, I also talked to a lot of real estate agents, builders, etc. And there's a city council guy that comes to the Orange County group who has talked about what's going on with property and the problems and the regulations constantly in the group. And he's been in the group for years and years. So if home prices grew at the same rate as inflation since 1970, this article says the median home price today would be just $177,788. That would help people buy homes, right, if it was $177,788. Instead, this article puts it at $408,100, all right? Overall prices of goods in America have risen 67% since 2000. That's a problem. Adjusting for inflation, the median household income has just increased 7% since 2000. That's only 0.3% per year. So that's a problem, right? There's also a piece on tuition here. There's housing prices versus inflation. And there's a chart here, I don't know if we'll put it up, on tuition and how it increased. And I think it goes back to 1965. And of course, what happened in 1965. Let's go to Hayek real quick now. And you could go through a lot of things where the government got involved. The debt of the federal government in 1985, according to Investopedia, was $1.823 trillion. Today, it is over 36 trillion according to sources. Now, why am I mentioning that? Hayek believed that in a free market with minimal government intervention, we don't have minimal government intervention. We have the Fed intervening, and we have Congress constantly intervening. We have the government operating in areas where they weren't enumerated to do so. In other words, the state gave federal government a little bit of power, but the federal government is out in these other areas. That's a problem. And he believes the most efficient, right, you want efficiency, system for resource allocation, he talks a lot about resource allocation, will lead to better outcomes for the people, including lower prices. So why am I putting the prices in there? What have we had? We've had a lot of government intervention and a lot of regulation. He's saying that's not the way to go. And why will the prices be lower? And why will you have greater innovation? Due to competition, right? You have a market rather than big government picking winners and losers. And he believed that government intervention, especially attempts to control prices, and you saw candidates recommending controlling prices, or manage demand, could have unintended negative consequences, including inflation. So we have a huge federal government and some big state governments. And the guy in Orange County constantly talks about all the local and state regulations for building. Now, if you have more supply, then maybe the prices will come down. Probably they will, right? If you have more supply than demand, if you have a lot of supply and a little bit of demand, probably the price will come down. But if you have an incredible amount of demand, and also because of regulations, it's very difficult and slow, I've been told builders just opted out of California, or they wanted to just build expensive places, and the same in Tennessee. So you have government spending, the Fed, and regulations. And he's saying you need little amount of government intervention. So let's go into some of the takeaways in the book. And I hope you get the book and read the whole thing. Yes, I just want to make sure we recommend this book. It's a fantastic book, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Loss of individual freedom. So what's he talking about? Socialism. Remember, he saw Hitler. Was around during that time. Hayek argued that socialism, with its centralized economic planning, undermines what? Your individual freedom. And I'm a big freedom guy. I like the choice when I want to buy something, and I want to make my decision. I don't want the government making it for me. In a socialism, under socialism and in a socialist system, the state has to do what? They've got to take control of the allocation of resources, right? And they've also got to take control of production and distribution, right, Kurt Chatham? Now, what does that require? That means eventually they're going to have to dictate what you consume, what you buy, what you prioritize, and what you produce. Now, I don't want that. I like freedom. Again, let's go to the freedom side where we can choose what we want to buy, right? This centralization strips people of the ability to make autonomous choices about their work. Where are you going to work? Don't you want to choose your job? Do you want to have goals and aspirations and opportunity? We've got to decrease the spending of the federal government so costs come down, right? Look at the COVID. What did the government do? It shut down the economy. A lot of times, I'll tell you another thing, government intervention. What do? Many times you can go through history and look at the government intervention in the United States, and their intervention made the problem worse, and then they come in. Let's look at student loans. Guaranteed the student loans, tuition went up. We have the chart. They got involved in Medicare, Medicaid. What happened to healthcare costs? They increased for the average person buying health insurance and going to the hospital. So a lot of times when government gets involved, moving towards socialism, what do we want to do? We have a mixed economy right now. We already have a lot of entitlements. The argument is to move to more of a free market and move to freedom and more opportunity versus moving to more socialism. So you want to be able to choose what job you work, right? If there's a shortage in a socialistic country, they may tell you what to do. Look what happened in Russia. Look what happened in Mao's China. We have the history too on our side, not just Hayek, and he goes into some of that. Lifestyle, purchases. If I want to go into a cigar shop, I want to buy the cigar I want. I don't want the government telling me I cannot smoke and cannot buy red meat. Think if the government did own grocery stores, which this guy wants to have some, but I think a lot of times the goal of many people and these factions of socialists is to move, more stores that way and the country that way sometimes. So what do you have? I want to be able to buy the cigar I want or the gun I want, and I want to be able to choose. I want to be able to choose the work and the job I do. And we have that in America still, and we want to maintain that. Socialism, if you have shortages, you're going to end up with shortages of food. Look what happened in collectivization of Russia, USSR, collectivization of China, Mao's China. Look how many millions starved. So let's keep going though. Choice, individual liberty is the point we're on. This is easy one to go all over the place, so I'll be careful. A socialist economy aims to replace the decentralized decision-making. What do we have here in America? In America, we have federalism, right? States gave the federal government a little bit of power. The states were supposed to keep the rest of the power. So, decentralized decision-making, though, in terms of markets, you would have the people, us, making decisions. I go buy something from Kurt, or I go buy something from Mike, and then we make a deal, right? Or I go to Kurt's store, or I go to Mike's store, and I choose where I want to shop, where I want to buy, based on a myriad number of factors, and I get to choose. And then what happens? We make deals. The market determines the price, right? That's important. You want the market determining the price so you don't get shortages, not the government, and you don't want much government intervention. So the socialists need a unified plan of collective goals, equality or shared prosperity. But no planner can figure all that out, right? There's not one guy or one committee that can really figure out how to meet everybody's needs, and it doesn't work. Socialism has, what? Failed historically. And look at a current example, Venezuela, right? Failed with socialism. Okay, no planner can account for the diverse preferences, needs, and talents of individuals. You want to be a musician, go do it. You want to be an actor, go do it. You want to be a filmmaker, go do it. You want to be a businessman, go do it. You want to start a startup, a technology startup, go do it. You can still do that. So since they can't take heed of all that, so they don't know everything that's going on, they're not gods, to enforce the plan, the state must override your personal choices, right? You don't get to decide anymore. Government will tell you what to do. And they have to compel you to conform. You remember COVID and the mandates and everything that happened and how coercive the government was becoming, and trying to use private business to do it as well. That's why you want it separate. Consequences. Individuals lose the freedom to pursue their own goals. We talked about that. I think I made a double note. So, and freedom, he says in the book, is not just political, but economic. What is that about? You need to have the right to own private property. Private property is good. Madison wrote about it. We could go on this point forever. We will not. You need control over your resources. You need control over your decisions and what you want to buy. And you need control over your labor. If you're a business owner, you need that as well. So socialism does what? What does it sacrifice? It sacrifices that economic freedom. So there's economic freedom. And he wrote another book called The Constitution of Liberty, I believe it's called, that I read, that was fantastic. He sees, Hayek, economic freedom as the foundation of all other liberties. Madison and the founders of this country believed it was incredibly important to be able to own private property and to secure your rights and have your property protected by the government, not stolen, not redistributed to others through socialism. So where's it fell? USSR, Soviet Union. Citizens, they had strict labor directives and they had consumption quotas. Do you want a quota or do you want to eat what you want to eat at the time? If you're extra hungry one day and you want the whole pizza, do you want to eat the whole pizza? You want to smoke 3 cigars some days? So economic control is not merely control of a sector of human life. It is the control of the means for all our ends, right? You need economic control. What do you want? You want less centralization. Here's where sometimes people misdiagnose the problem. I used to call too big to fail, too corrupt to fail, right? You don't want to see the government picking winners and losers. And I think this is part of the drive to socialism. People sense something's unfair, and they don't know what it is, but they know it's unfair, right? The government's picking winners, losers. You've got subsidies going on from the government, rewarding certain industries and certain people. Too big to fail, rewarded Wall Street. But you don't want to make it worse by moving to bigger government and more centralization. The answer is moving to more decentralization and moving more to a freer market, right? So increasing the free market, not decreasing it, where you have more control over your life. And if you work really hard or you have a great idea, you can win with it. And let the market determine your value, your price, and everything else, not the government telling you how much you're going to make, what your minimum wage is going to be, what your maximum wage is, whatever they want to come up with next. If you like this subject, please like, subscribe, and make a comment and tell us what your most scary part of socialism would be for you. So imagine being told what job you do or what food you're going to buy next day or whether you're going to be forced to take a vaccine. Number 2, economic calculation problem. So Hayek, and there's another guy named Mises. Mises.org is a good site if you need to go to it. Mises wrote a book called Socialism. Hayek took, I think he looked at it. It seemed like he looked at it. And built on that, the concept that socialism fails because central planners what? They lack the information they need to allocate the resources properly and efficiently. In a market economy, prices emerge from transactions, what we talked about. I go into a cigar store, 30 other guys go into a cigar store, and then people eventually, out of 300 stores, that cigar manufacturers know how to price it, the store knows how to price it, and you get a price, rather than the government saying you're going to charge $30 for cigars. So socialism does what? What does it eliminate? It eliminates your price mechanism. And then planners, you know they can't do this, can't calculate the most efficient use of resources. So planners have to decide what to produce, how much, and for whom, without what? They don't have anything to guide them. They don't have market prices to guide them. So that's a problem. So that's a problem of socialism. So, you take an example. How many cigars are we going to make if the government was doing it? Or how many shoes are we going to make? How many cars are we going to make? Whatever you want to put in there, whatever you like. What's something you like to buy that you don't want to be told what to buy? You can make a comment on that. What do you want to buy that you don't want to be told how much you can get of it? And you don't want shortages in it. Toilet paper was a shortage a little bit in COVID. You remember that? Consequences. This leads to chronic, I never had a problem with it, but This leads to chronic inefficiencies. Some people said they had it. I read an article that some people had a problem. I didn't. This leads to chronic inefficiencies, shortage of essential goods. So you had the bread lines in the Soviet Union. You had massive starvation. You had millions of people dying. There's another book called The Gulag Archipelago. That's a good book on how problematic communism is, socialism. By the way, he talks about fascism, another problem. And what do all these governments do? They're moving power and centralizing it, and then you lose what? Individual liberty. So that's the problem with communism, socialism, fascism.